Hey there, Bear Club! At the Mama Bear Initiative, we explore how to protect ourselves so we can protect our cubs, the people who depend on us. Join us and get the confidence you need to stay safe, make good choices, and protect yourself and those you care about. Let's go! Hello and welcome back to the Mama Bear Initiative podcast. I'm Stephanie Dunham.
I'm Evelyn Mason.
I'm Rochelle Knapp.
We'd like to thank you for joining us on this podcast episode. Today, we're in February.
Yeah.
Hard to believe.
We had a kind of a crazy month with too much illness.
Yes.
January.
Definitely.
Yes.
Yeah, I got hit with two separate viruses. The flu and the norovirus.
Yeah.
Which
Not
made
at the same time, but
no,
still.
thank God.
But pretty close together.
Seems like a mercy that we only seem to get one virus at a time.
Definitely.
Yeah, but we were supposed to record last week and didn't because I was vomiting all night prior and then had a fever all day.
Not good. Not really conducive for
No.
good
I
recording.
just
Or anything
Not
else for that matter.
just not up for it.
No.
Yeah. So anyway, so I think hopefully we'll smooth out this whole thing and be, recording regularly. Hopefully, because
Yes, that would be nice.
yeah. So so we're going to talk about something that's important to us. It's sort of springing off of our conversation with Michelle Manu a few weeks ago, which is developing a protective mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I feel like, one of the things that is really important to us, given our history with, various kinds of trauma in the past, and also our martial arts training, self-defense training, that we've sort of developed this protective mindset for ourselves and for people around us. So
Yeah.
we started this podcast based off that idea.
Yes, we did. That's true.
And oh look, I'm wearing earrings. I forgot about that. I can't see them though. Oh well.
It's either one on that side.
Yeah.
You move your head.
Yeah. Anyway, so we're, wanting to talk about self-defense and talk about, especially for women, because it feels like what we're trying to accomplish is getting women interested in the idea of protecting.
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody has to be a warrior, but we should be like thinking about how we're going to protect our families or children,
Yes.
etc.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyway, what we're going to do today is we're going to define what we mean when we say protection.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to talk about ways we protect. And we're also going to talk about how to develop a protective mindset. So we're encouraging people to consider this and to develop for themselves and, find ways to manage protection, especially the women. I mean, it feels like in society the default is men protect, and I think it's a wonderful thing that men protect. But also, what if the men aren't around?
Right.
Like we talked about with Michelle.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think
go ahead.
I think women are more inclined to be naturally protective because they have children. And I think that's just that instinct is just there because of that reason.
Yeah. Protecting home, protecting children. But I think, there may be a tendency to sort of squash it down or even let the men take care of it. So being able to cultivate it,
Hence the name of our podcast, Mama Bear Initiative.
What?
I know.
What's the Mama Bear within?
Right. Yes. It's the name of the movie.
There you go.
It's the
name. Yeah. So let's start with defining protection.
Evelyn, you want to take that?
Sure, as the resident word nerd.
Please. Yes, please.
So, okay, so a dictionary definition kind of looks like the activity of protecting someone or something. Okay, so it's sort of like one of those circular definitions. Protection is protecting.
Right.
But I
Yeah.
really like the other definition we found as well that says it's a covering that's intended to protect from damage or injury.
Right.
Okay, so that gives us a little more of an idea
Yes.
what it is.
Right. A covering, like
Mm-hmm.
if you're out with your kids, you sort of position them physically near you
Mm-hmm.
so that you're safe.
Right.
Or there's that you're safe, but they're safe.
They're safe.
Right.
Yep.
That's a physical covering,
Yeah.
Mhm.
right? Or let's say you teach them something, how to say no, for example. That would be something along the lines of a mental covering.
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a form of that they can protect themselves without a thing protecting them. Yeah.
right. Because with, learning to say no, learning to walk away, learning to confront, those are all part of being protective of yourself or other people.
Yeah.
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 And
So-
teaching your kids how to do that for themselves is really important, so they have that same mindset when they get older.
Right. Right. Yeah. But I think my point was it's not just always a physical thing.
Right.
It's also a mental thing, an emotional thing,
Right.
um, decisions you make on where you walk,
Right.
who you talk to, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. And Evelyn wanted to make sure we covered what protection isn't. Yeah. So, Rochelle, do you want to talk about that?
Sure. Protection isn't manipulation or coercion. It's not any sort of behavior that would hurt someone. That's very much the opposite of what protection is. Things that we need to be protected from.
Mm-hmm.
And abusive behavior, especially, is not protection, although it could seem like someone is being protective of you initially, when in reality, they're actually trying to control you in some way or manipulate you, which is also controlling you, really. And so that's definitely not protection. That's something you want to avoid or find a way to protect yourself from.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think we were also talking about this the other day, and we were talking about how people can become, even if they're trying to protect someone else, they could become aggressive or controlling or something towards the thing that they're trying to stop.
Mm-hmm.
And the differences between boundary setting and trying to control.
Yes.
Yeah. Trying to force someone to do something as opposed to, setting your own boundaries and enforcing those.
Right.
Right. And it was interesting because I had mentioned there was a video by a YouTuber named Emma from Therapy in a Nutshell, where she reviews a video of a dad who is telling a kid who's on a motorbike that he can't ride his motorbike in the park near their house.
Mm-hmm.
And she keeps a score of the times where he's actually setting a boundary and when he's actually being controlling. Right? When he was being controlling way more than he was boundary setting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's that idea of kind of like, I'm better than you. You need to do what I say.
Yes.
Right.
As opposed to, like we talked about, teaching, here's how you protect yourself. Or as a parent, of course, you're going to be a little more, I'm the parent.
Right.
But that's different than just trying to control every little, motion.
Right. Yeah. So, protection is providing, covering, taking action, teaching, helping people understand the differences between setting boundaries,
Mm-hmm.
controlling behavior, that kind of thing.
Right.
And protecting someone else doesn't involve lashing out, controlling,
Mm-hmm.
manipulating, coercing, or extorting in any way.
Right.
Right.
If you're using those tactics to like stop someone from doing something, you're just as much in the wrong.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Now, physical control to stop someone from hurting someone is a different problem than you better do what I say or else.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's a different kind of problem.
Yes,
Right.
because that could easily become dangerous in its own way by overdoing it. If you're
Right.
trying to physically restrain someone, it could get dicey really fast. You have to really be careful about. It's like self-defense. You have to be really careful about what you're doing and how you're doing it, and not causing harm to that person, but also trying to restrain them if they are in fact trying to hurt someone else or themselves.
Right. But I'm pointing out the difference between doing that, which could be justified,
Mm-hmm.
and controlling with your mouth, which may
Right.
not be justified.
True.
Yeah.
Yep.
It could go into
I see your point.
manipulation, and
Mhm.
I think as we train in our martial art, part of what we do is we try to keep our hearts pure. That's one of the concepts,
Mhm.
so we can still be, I would say, almost like a steward of a situation, where we
Right.
can take charge without going into impurity, so to speak, ending up being as bad as they are, like you said, Steph.
Mhm.
Keeping
Yeah.
it, clean, for
Yeah.
lack of a better
Yeah.
term.
Being righteous in the
Ethical. Yeah.
situation and ethical and moral instead of creating more barriers and more problems by trying
Right.
to manage something in a controlling or manipulative way.
Yeah.
And I can, by my own experience with my job, I can understand why someone might go into, even not intending to go into, a sort of manipulative or controlling mindset, because it's very hard when someone else is being very obnoxious, angry, whatever, to maintain control. It does take some training to be able to keep your cool and not manipulate, but also keep your boundary for protection or whatever you need it for.
By the way, if you're listening to this, we have an episode. It's audio only, but on boundary setting. What is it? How to do it,
Yes. we do.
etc. So go back and listen to that if you're not sure how to do that.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and move on
Mm-hmm.
to defining ways we protect. We already mentioned being a physical barrier. What are ways, Evelyn? You had a passel of kids you were taking care of. What are
Yes.
ways that you physically covered them?
Yeah, so if we were walking down the street, I would walk on the street side. Everybody be holding hands. And a lot of times what we would do is, because I had 4 kids, I would assign one of the olders to one of the youngers too. So there's a way to also let them learn how to protect, as well as, my protecting the whole group.
Right.
Another thing we used to do, if we would go grocery shopping, the youngest one, usually a little baby or toddler, be sitting in the grocery in the cart, and the other ones would each have a hand on the cart.
Yeah, that's a
So
really good tactic for keeping your
yeah.
kids with you.
Mm-hmm.
If you turn your back and they wander off and somebody snatches them,
Yeah,
not a good thing.
that's true.
And this way,
You don't want them
they're
wandering
all
off.
they're all walking along, and I can see all of them because they're all in
Right.
front of me.
Yeah.
And it was also helpful when they had ones where you could actually put the kids inside. You ever see those carts with like the little
Oh yeah,
little
Mhm.
trunk?
we use them.
Oh, they loved those.
I'm
But it
trying to
made
get
it fun for them. Plus, they knew that if things went well in the store, and I laid down some ground rules, that there would be maybe a little snack that mom might pick for
A
them.
little bribing.
A little bribing, just a little, but enough to look. I've kind of like a dog, I hate to say this, but very food motivated. My kids are snack motivated. So I would say, okay, if you're not begging me for anything, you might get something, which is true. But all of that was so that we're all prepared to go in. and we
Mhm.
have
Yeah.
a little talk before we get out,
Yeah.
each one of you will have your hand in the cart, so there's no like confusion, kind of lay it
Mhm.
all out. And then we went ahead and did it. Not that it went well, I mean, perfectly, but
Yeah.
generally it went well.
That's good.
And they
Yeah.
knew, how close they needed to stay and everything if there wasn't a cart.
Yeah. Yeah. And, we mentioned creating mental barriers to mental harm. So, we kind of talked about that a little bit where, learning to say no,
Mm-hmm.
learning to
Mhm.
walk away. Also, we have episodes on that.
Mm-hmm.
Yep,
The
we do.
Power of No, I think it's called.
Yes.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, teaching your kids stranger danger,
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
that sort of thing is also protective.
Yes.
Like not talking to a stranger unless mommy's with you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because it's not that, I want them to fear every new person. It's more about if you're not with mommy, you're not
Right.
just talking to somebody. If you're not with daddy, whoever is the parent in that, situation,
Yes.
or the person in charge.
Ooh, excuse me. Sorry, folks. My
Little
workout is
tired.
catching up to me. It was a heavy one today.
Mm.
Literally.
Let's just say that. Yeah. So, um, you kind of talked about taking action to stay safe in any environment. One thing my husband and I do, one of us is watching a door, usually the main
Mhm.
door.
Mm.
So one of us is seated where we can actually see what's coming through the front door. That's a way to
Right.
stay safe in an environment. I'm sure, Rochelle, do you have any other thoughts on that?
Yeah. I was just thinking about like the difference between how I used to get into my car or get out of my car versus how I do it now. I'm much more aware of my environment and looking around, especially if it's dark outside.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's
Yeah.
not late at night, it gets dark early, in the wintertime. So I just take a look around and listen for anything unusual, just to be aware of whatever's around me, just in case. I mean, more often than not, it's safe, but you just never know.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Evelyn mentioned keeping her kids close to her by having to hold the cart. Just generally paying attention to who's in the aisle at the grocery store.
Mm-hmm.
If you feel like somebody's following you and you keep turning around and there they are, they probably are following you.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
And so what would you do? You would leave that situation, go get some help,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. Next on our list for defining ways we protect, we have learning, martial arts, self-defense, and how to use weapons like guns and knives.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever else you may think of. I know there's plenty of other
Yes, there are.
Right.
weapons. Pretty much in the hands of a martial artist, anything is a weapon.
True.
Yes. And I think that's one of my favorite parts. Whenever we've trained in martial arts or with self-defense, it's like, how can a pen be a weapon? How
Yeah,
can your umbrella be a weapon?
I love
Yeah.
How
that
can
too.
your backpack or your purse or, your
Yeah.
phone?
Yeah, and we've used all those things.
Mhm.
We have some special training related to how to use a pen to defend yourself.
Yes.
And that could just be a regular old Bic ballpoint pen or something.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't have to be anything special,
No.
like a tactical pen or something of that nature. It could be a stick.
Yeah.
True.
That would
You
work
know,
too.
But what do you
Strong
guys
stick.
think about? What do you guys think about this aspect of protection? Like, I'd say a small percentage of people in the world actually train in self-defense or martial arts, or
Yeah.
if they purchase a gun or whatever, they may or may not spend time on the range. Like, what do you guys think about that?
I think it's unwise, especially if you are using a gun or any sort of deadly weapon. You really need to know what you're doing because there's so many things that can go wrong. So many stories I've heard about people getting hurt because they weren't smart about it or couldn't get to it in time
Yeah,
for whatever they needed it for. Didn't really have a plan. It's just very dangerous to not be aware. If you're going to have a weapon in your house, especially, to not know how to use it. I can't even imagine like the tragedies that's caused are awful because they just don't know what they're doing, or they have it in the wrong place, or a kid finds it. Any number of things can happen.
There's definitely safety issues involved. Like, I know for myself, my martial arts, I don't have a gun.
Yeah, would
I
never
do
have
carry a
gun.
knife on me, as where I can anyway. This one time, my husband, this funny little aside, one time I had to take my husband to the emergency room after a car accident, and I was like, "Oh, we need to empty out our pockets, so to speak, of all of our weapons." And between us, we took out 7 different objects, including like 4 knives.
That's funny.
I always have a weapon on me. It may not look
Yeah.
like one, but I always have at least one on me, usually 3.
Yeah.
But being prepared and ready to defend myself, defend my family,
Yes.
if I have to, is part of my training.
Yeah.
Yes,
And
definitely.
I think if you're going to have the idea of using a weapon, whether it's an improvised one or an actual weapon, Rochelle had mentioned about the training. I guess we all, Steph had as well. But also, don't think that it's going to be there when you need it if you
Right.
haven't practiced. So you could say, well, this Sharpie would make a great weapon. And then I pull it out of my purse. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. The guy's grabbing me,
You're certainly not going to stab anybody with it.
Right.
I mean, it's kind of blunt,
What are you going to do? Mark their face to death? I don't know. But there are ways to use a pen to defend yourself, and you have to get training to know how to do that.
But unless I have some techniques that I could pull out when I need them, it's just a thing. I may or may not use it well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to take a little time, practice something,
learn something.
Because the other side of that is, if you know what you're doing with some ordinary object, you're going to have the element of surprise. That
Right.
the person will be taken aback by what you've done or what you're doing to them, with whatever it is.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Because you'll already have in your mind. It's so interesting to have this. So, we're going to talk more about developing a protective mindset, but you start to create scenarios in your mind. If this, then this. Where are my keys? Where are any potential tools I could use?
Right.
How could I use them?
Right.
It just becomes a whole, instead of being passive, you become proactive.
Right.
And I've got some plans, and
Which
now I can
brings
be
me
confident.
to our next point.
Woohoo! Unintentional segue. You're welcome.
Yeah, speaking up and intervening on someone else's behalf. And we've been doing reels and TikToks or whatnot about this specific
Yes.
thing, because there have been times when I've protected other people, and there have been times when I've been protected. And
Yeah.
having someone speak up for me and when I'm vulnerable is amazing.
It is. Yes,
It
truly.
really is.
Truly is. That's one thing I'm really thankful for with my job. I haven't had a lot of jobs where the managers would have my back, but in this particular one, I do. And I'm so thankful for that, because if something goes wrong with a customer, which happens occasionally, I can call any one of them and I know they're going to back me up. I know I'm going to get the support that I need. And that's really important, because, people get upset very quickly about things. Things can get out of control. You just don't know what could happen. And so having someone in authority have your back and actually take control of the situation is really helpful.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so let's move on to our last section. How to develop a protective mindset. First on the list is to take responsibility for self and others. Now, that one seems kind of obvious to me. Like, if you have siblings that are younger than you, or children, or a spouse, it seems like it should be obvious that you would just automatically do that. But I don't think everybody feels that way.
No.
No, especially it seems like these days people get so isolated. It's about me. It's about my comfort level. It's about what I want.
Yeah.
And I don't want to get involved. Bad things might happen to me. So it becomes very self-focused.
Yeah.
It can happen.
There's an element of sacrifice involved
Mhm.
when you're taking the lead, when you're taking responsibility for other people, yeah, you might get hurt.
Mhm.
There's always that risk, and it seems like more people are apt to pull out their phone and record than they are to step in and help, which I find extremely annoying.
That is
And
Yeah.
definitely something I know there's like parodies of that, but it's almost like so real
mm,
of what actually happens. And I mean, like, why are you recording this person hurting this other person? Why aren't you stepping in?
right,
Yeah.
You know, that to me is just crazy.
yeah, it is awful, really.
Yeah, and I don't know, have we lost our ability to take responsibility for other people even if we don't know them?
Mm.
I guess so. I guess, like Ev was saying, nobody wants to step in. Everybody's thinking of themselves, and I
Yeah.
guess taking pleasure in someone's misfortune, which is horrifying. Someone's getting
Yeah.
hurt by someone else, and they're recording it. I don't understand that at all. That way of
Yeah.
thinking.
I think there's a this sort of spectator mindset,
Mhm.
almost like you're watching it, like almost like a movie or TV, or instead of really understanding this is real and I can do something about it, but perhaps the barrier is I should do something about it,
Mhm.
Hmm.
and I need to do something about it.
Right.
You know, who has that in the moment ready? And that's why people who do, it's remarkable. It gets on the news. They're called heroes, and they say, "Well, I'm just doing what anyone would do." But is
Yeah.
that true? Would just anyone do that? Nobody did, but you did.
Right.
Right. Yeah, so the next one on our list is learning to be prepared for different situations. I think you mentioned, Evelyn, thinking about scenarios like
Hmm.
if this happened, I would do that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know how much to say about this, but I have things hidden around the house that are sort of, if this were to happen, I could access this thing
Hmm.
Right.
to help defend my home. That's me being prepared.
Hmm.
Um, and, I mean, there's other ways for me to be prepared. Like today, I felt protective over my property. So I normally take my keys out of my car when I get to the gas station, but I always lock the door.
Hmm.
And I was parked really close to another car, and I just was like, okay, get out of the car, lock it. My purse
Hmm.
is right there. My phone's right there. I'm going to lock the door. I needed to get trash out of my car, so I had to unlock
Yeah.
the car, get
Hmm.
the trash, relock the car. That to me is sort of being prepared
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
to handle what could be destructive.
Hmm.
Yeah. So we had mentioned about being proactive. That's a way to be proactive because
Yes.
Mhm.
you're thinking through what could possibly happen if my doors are open, especially if my, purse is sitting right there.
Right.
Somebody could just, I'm busy doing something over here. They open the door, whip it out, take off.
Yeah. You might never
But
know.
being proactive means I realize something might happen. So what
Mhm.
can I do to prevent it?
Yes.
And also, well, maybe I should. I mean, I remember seeing this video this self defense lady did. She talked about this gas station where people would people would break glass to get a lady's purse out of the passenger side,
Wow.
and that it happened more than once. It was caught on the camera that was at the gas station,
Mm.
and
Right.
so she was even saying, put your purse out of sight, lock your door, be mindful of who's around. These guys were so sneaky.
Hmm.
But knowing that that was a thing at that gas station, I would probably be like, well, I'm not going to that gas station then. So being aware.
This is
That's
the
another thing that you can do is being aware and choosing to go somewhere else.
yeah.
Hmm.
This isn't exactly in the line of purse snatching, but I heard a story a long time ago of a woman who was driving and she stopped in at a gas station and got gas, and it was relatively late at night, and the attendant kept insisting she would come into the store. And she's like, I don't understand what's going on. And he just kept saying, can you please just come in, ma'am? She comes into the store and he tells her there's a guy crouching in the back of her car. or laying
Wow.
down in the back of her car. And so he saw this person in her car when she pulled in, because I guess the light, the lights are really bright. The floodlights above the gas pumps are usually pretty bright at night. And so he essentially saved her life by insisting she come into the store. I mean, that to me was like incredible that he did that, because I think that was before people didn't want to step in and be more protective.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this is one of Evelyn's favorites, being adaptable and flexible in changing situations. We feel that's part of being protective. Can you explain why, Evelyn?
Right. So you may have an idea. I talked about how, okay, if this, then that, if this, then that. Well, if things don't go as planned, we
Right.
have to have lots of backup plans. I think
Right.
because, it's sort of like in our martial art, when we're doing a certain thing, the person comes in with a punch and then you punch them back. But the real world is
Not
people are
quite
not
that
that
safe.
predictable. No.
Yeah, that's true.
So being able to have the skills where, okay, that didn't work. Let me try this over here. Oh, he's coming in with this. Well, now I got to do this,
Right.
and to
Yeah.
just be prepared. I think part of being prepared is, and, being able to do that is to think about it when you're not in the situation.
Yeah, and knowing what your options are.
Yes.
It's easier to be adaptable and flexible if you know what you can do
Mm-hmm.
in a situation.
That's true.
Because there's, my husband likes to call it bending people up in pretzels. He's like, well, he better not mess with you because you can bend him up in a pretzel. I'm like, maybe, I don't know. But if I try to do that and I'm fighting somebody who will not bend like a pretzel, I have to know what my other options are.
Right.
Yeah.
Learning about weaknesses in the body and learning how to exploit that, and
Yeah.
how to hit somebody at my height and my weight like a freight train,
Yeah.
Right.
despite the fact that I'm female.
Yeah. And we talk about, angles and things that we can do as women.
Yep.
And plus we may be coming across somebody where normally this kind of strike would work, or this kind of hold or something would work, but this guy's high or he's drunk and he's not feeling things. So maybe what I need to do is something more structural to his body if he can't really feel the pain. But I
Right.
could still get him in a way, or, knock him off balance or something. So
Yes. I've learned how to knock down tall 200-pound men
Yep.
with a body strike, which basically is just a football tackle.
mhm.
I've learned how to do it. And if I can't manage them in a different way, that might be my option.
Yeah.
You guys have learned that too. I know you know that.
Yes, yes. The term freight train, people use that a lot, but then you experience it, you're like, oh, that's why they call it a freight train. She's not as loud, but it's all this force coming
Yes.
all
Well,
at once
you
in one
guys,
direction.
we're all
Oh.
different. We're all different. We're basically the same height, but we're all different weights and body composition.
Mhm.
And you guys have also learned those techniques.
Oh, you mean
Yes.
learn, not been on the receiving end, but
Well,
well,
that's been true too.
both,
But
both.
Yeah.
But it's very gratifying when you realize, like, okay, I come in at this angle. First of all, Rochelle had mentioned the element of surprise. First of all, he's not expecting it. This is one of the little things women, they might look at you and think, she can't do anything. Haha, use that to your advantage. But you come in at a certain angle, hit him in a certain place. Steph had mentioned about weak areas. Next thing you know, the guy's on the floor and you're like, this works. And we've worked with partners who aren't just going to give it to us.
yeah,
I've had ones just sort of smile at me. Are you going to do the technique, which
Yep.
forces us to do it right.
Right.
I had. You may remember this person. I'm not going to mention him by name, but I had a technique I was doing that involved a takedown and then a choke out. And I did the takedown. This was to a guy. I did the takedown, and then I'm like holding them by the throat to do the choke out with my tiny little princess hands. And I'm slowly pushing more and more, putting more force in. He's just laying there, and I'm like, what are you doing? Why are you tapping out? And he goes, just waiting for you to actually do the technique on me. And I'm like, okay then. And then I went for it, and he finally tapped out because I was trying to be nice because I was holding like this,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
and doing this kind of movement around the trachea. I didn't want to hurt him. But yeah, he was waiting for me to like do the technique. And so I did.
mm-hmm.
Nice.
And because of that, I know what that feels like.
Yeah.
All right. So we have one more point before we wrap up. Taking action when needed, or better known as being brave. We kind of talked about it a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Being responsible, it's a little bit self-sacrificial. It requires bravery.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It
it does.
requires this higher sense of, like protective mindset. It requires this higher sense of responsibility for whoever it is you're trying to protect, whether it's somebody you care about or someone you don't know.
Right.
Right.
So, I feel like we could maybe work on developing more of that these days. I think Rochelle talked about that a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And, helping people understand why it's so important.
Yes. I think
Yeah.
you have to be willing to do what others won't. That's the hardest part. Stepping
Yeah.
out and putting yourself in a vulnerable place to help protect someone else isn't
Yeah.
easy to do, but you can be that person's hero, which is pretty great.
Yeah.
I'll be so thankful for you.
Your story that we put on TikTok, Rochelle, when you intervened on a couple who the woman was apparently looking like she's being coerced in some way,
Mm-hmm.
got a lot of attention on TikTok. People were really like, wow, that's so great. Somebody called you an angel. I don't know if you read that.
No, I didn't read that yet.
Yeah,
Wow.
they said, oh,
Agreed.
you're an angel. And I'm like, let's all be angels.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's all do it.
Yes.
And I think, if we were on the receiving end of some kind of aggression, wouldn't we want somebody to step in?
That's right.
Yeah.
So
That's right.
be that for someone else. I think spending time really sitting with that idea and deciding in advance, I'm going
Yes.
to look past myself. Because that can be so hard to even get to the place where, yeah, I'm not going to just talk about it or say it's a good idea, but I'm going to be ready to actually act.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And then when the situation is happening, okay, here we go,
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, that brings us to the end of our discussion on how to develop a protective mindset. We are on YouTube and Spotify with the video currently.
Mm-hmm.
Spotify does send our podcast over to iHeartRadio and Amazon Music as a audio only version.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. And then we're also, like I said, creating reels on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook,
Yep.
YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
I guess they're called shorts on YouTube.
Yes.
That you can like follow along with our thoughts on all the things that we're talking about.
Yes.
So we encourage you. My throat is, excuse me. We encourage you to share information, share what we're talking about. If you feel like it's worth something, that if you agree with us and you want to see more people be heroes, be angels, be braver,
Yeah.
share this with them.
Yes.
Please do.
Yeah. So we'd like to thank you for joining us on this podcast episode. I'm Stephanie Dunham.
I'm Evelyn Mason.
I'm Rochelle Knapp.
Have a great night or a great day,
Yeah.
whenever you're listening to this.
Bye, everybody.
Bye,
Thanks
guys.
for joining us.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Thanks so much for joining us as we discussed such an important topic. We hope you got some food for thought and encouragement to keep going and keep growing. See you later, Bear Club.